Well, good afternoon. I'm Todd Little with Kemp Harvest Financial, and I want to welcome you to our town hall meeting today. These town hall meetings are quarterly events that we hold for our clients and friends on topics that have been of interest to them. Today's topic is actually a great one for us to introduce via webinar as we're talking today about internet security. Let me quickly introduce our presenter today. Our presenter today is Frank Ableson. Frank operates a boutique computer and network support company called Navitend. Prior to starting Navitend, Frank held various positions in the software industry, both in companies based in the U.S. as well as the U.K. Frank graduated from Cornell University, where he studied operations research industrial engineering. And yes, he is a basketball player, so basketball actually helped with his admission to Cornell. And Frank currently lives with his wife and children in New Jersey. So we'll go to the presentation now, and as it's a pre-recorded webinar, Frank is already a few slides in, so we'll join him in progress. Thank you and enjoy.
Email. So you jump onto your Aunt Priscilla's computer and you go to check your email. Well, your password program is at home, so you need a mechanism of surviving the complex password world and still be able to remember things. So what you want to do is you want to have a plan for that and be intentional, because when you're not intentional about having a strategy, you tend to say, okay, well, my dog's name is Spike, so how about Spike 1, 2, 3, and a lot of other people have a dog named Spike. Here's the other kind of evil challenge, if you will, of keeping complex passwords is if you only had to remember one, you could do that, but it's a dangerous thing to repeat passwords across different sites. The reason for that is different sites are going to exercise different due care and diligence with your information. And you might have a super awesome secure password with 33 characters, spaces, upper and lower case, etc. And one of the sites that you visit might store that password in a non-cryptographically secure manner, and/or they might be hacked and that information gets publicized in a breach, and now your password, whether it's simple or complex, is now available to the general public. And if you've used that password at your bank and your online finance portal and Facebook and Gmail, you're kind of in trouble, because that one key is going to unlock a lot of doors, and it's an area to be mindful of, to not repeat yourself with your passwords. And again, go into this process with a strategy and understand that it's important to give it focus. So if you recall the election that we had just a few months ago, regardless of whether you're pleased or not pleased with the outcome, it's undeniable to say that the key players in that contest made some mistakes with their email. They clicked on links thinking that they were going to sign into their email, and what did they get? They got a page that looked like Gmail. They put their password in. Oh, funny, it didn't work. But what actually happened was the password was stolen. And this is a very, very common practice, where you get a link in your email, you click through, and it looks like PNC Bank or Gmail or Bank of America, etc. And before you know it, you've given away your most precious online piece of information, which is your password. So always, always, always have a posture of security. Anytime you see an email or you see a page and you're tempted to click through and put some information, stop and think. Is there a vulnerability here? Am I reacting in a way that's going to leave my information vulnerable to someone else who doesn't have my best interests at heart. So this brings us into the idea of identity theft. So the topic of identity theft is broad and wide in terms of the details, but at the end of the day, all of our identities and our assets are being targeted with identity theft. And a lot of times this can happen and we're not even aware of it. And the circumstance of applying for a loan and finding out that you've already taken out $100,000 loan, these things happen. You try to secure some financing, or you try to get any kind of background check clearance takes place, and you find yourself in a circumstance where you're surprised. And unless it's a birthday cake, nobody really likes a surprise. Certainly not with our money or our identity. So how do we combat that? This is combated primarily through communication. So if you're in a scenario where you have a shared bank account, credit card, debit card, etc., it's very important, and often a lot of times email addresses, it's very important to communicate. So for example, if you're going to go purchase something online, let your spouse know that you're going to get a new dog sweater, because every dog needs a sweater for Christmas, right? Especially in June. But it's important to communicate, because if we don't communicate about where we're spending money, it leaves us vulnerable to some other scams and things that we'll talk about here in a moment. So this presentation is on internet security from a high level, but the truth is that most attacks actually come about through social engineering as a general description. And one way that we're significantly engineered socially is via the telephone. So you get a phone call and they claim to be the local community college, and your credit card didn't go through, and your tuition payment for your son or daughter didn't go through, and they need to get a credit card right away so they can get credit for the semester. Or there's an issue with your property tax, or your tax return is late, and they need to verify information just to make sure that it's not you. Well, anytime you get a phone call that in any way has to do with your identity, do not give information over the phone. The two broad categories here are, number one, you're going to be contacted by folks who are not legitimate. And if you just say, no problem, I'll call you back, this problem goes away in most cases. Never call back the phone number that they give you. So you get an inquiry. I've had a number of times where I've received phone calls from Amex, and they say, hey, there's some suspicious activity on your card. We want to talk to you about it. I say, okay, fine. This sounds like it might be legitimate. And then I grab my wallet, look at the card, and I call back the number on my credit card, not the caller ID, not the number that was left on the voicemail. I always will call back the number that I have a significant amount of confidence to be accurate. I've actually received an inquiry from a large company in our neighborhood that said, hey, we want to do some business with you. And I said, oh, wow, that's great. My marketing must be working. And I know that it couldn't have been legit because my marketing's not that great. But I figured that maybe somebody saw our sign next to the Dunkin' Donuts and they were calling. And I went online to check their phone number, and there's something funny about the website. And I did enough research to find out that this organization had done enough preparation for this scam to actually put up a fake website that looked very, very legitimate. But I kept probing a little bit until I got a legitimate phone number, and then I called that number to find out only that it was a scam and they didn't want to buy anything, which was a little bit depressing, but it was kind of fun to spoil their scam. Another area where we have identity vulnerability is in the mail. We all get tons and tons of mail. Sometimes these are usually it's solicitations, particularly if you have college-age children. You get remarkable amounts of mail. The mail contains a tremendous amount of personally identifiable information. And sometimes this is healthcare oriented things. You get the receipt from your insurance that says, hey, here's your bill for your visit to the podiatrist or the dentist or whatnot. Sometimes this mail is legitimate, sometimes it's not. Have a posture of security, not only in how you read your mail, but also in how you dispose of it. We have two recycling bins in our home office. One is for recycling, the other is for shredding, and depending on the season, sometimes the shredding makes its way to the bonfire. But be mindful that anything that you put into the mail is likely to is I shouldn't say likely. It's possible that could be gone through, and don't put anything in the mail that you would want somebody to to have that information. And just as a reminder, if you're local to the Kemp office and you've got some documents that you'd like to securely dispose of, you can just call the office and arrange to bring those over. And don't assume that you put it in the garbage that's the end of it. And one of my I've been told that I'm very antisocial because I don't put tons of pictures up of my kids on Facebook. And identity theft is probably biggest for children. Why? Because they're not usually filing tax returns. They're not usually applying for a driver's license. They're not usually getting a credit card or a car loan. So all children, when they're born, within a couple months, they've got a social security number. So you take someone's home address, their social security number, their date of birth, and you can pretty much go apply for anything you like. I've seen a lot of times on Facebook, congratulations to my son Timmy, who turns 5 today. Well, all right. So I've got the first name, the last name, the date of birth, and that's a lot of information to casually give away. I've even seen people take pictures of their 17-year-old's license and say, "Hey, look, Timmy's driving today. Here's his license." So now you've got the license number on there too. So you just be mindful of what we put onto places like Facebook. So passwords are the key to our information. The biggest thing that we have that can be stolen is our identity. So let's look at some of the common scams. We've talked a lot about clicking on things in emails, and this has been, is currently, and will likely be for some time, the most vulnerable way for us to lose our identity, to lose assets, is through clicking on links. And usually you say, well, don't click on links from people that you don't know. Well, yeah, that's like don't talk to strangers. But what's even more dangerous is clicking on links from someone that you do know, because it's very common for one person's email to be compromised, and then what happens is that creates a launch pad for subsequent attacks on everyone in their address book. So we've probably all received the email from someone in Nigeria who just needs to give us a large amount of money to deposit, and then they'll let us keep all of it except for what they need for lunch. You've probably seen the email scam of, hey, I'm stuck in London and I've lost my wallet. Can you wire me some money? Those are some of the scams that you kind of just laugh about. But the thing that says, hey, look, I just read this article, I think you'd really enjoy it, or look at the picture of Uncle Rich's dog and the trick he's doing. These things that are close enough to us to look legit. That's when we let our guard down. So when we get anxious, when our guard and our defense mechanism kicks in, is as much of a time when we're vulnerable to attack. So we need to be particularly wary about emails that say things like payment declined, or thank you for canceling your account. We'll miss you, and it's a service that you didn't cancel. Or you get an email that says thank you for your purchase in the Apple iTunes store. The $99 will be debited from your account, or click here to cancel your order. I got that very email this morning. I looked at it and I said, oh, that's cute. Somebody's trying to goat me into clicking through here and signing on to my iTunes account, which if I were to click through that and sign on, I would not have been signing into Apple. I would have been signing into somebody else's website. So anything online, we need to slow down and check our emotions. If we're anxious about something, take a walk, get a glass of water, then come back, look at the email, try to understand what it's saying. And let's say it is from iTunes, or it's from Amazon, and it looks like we made a purchase that we don't really remember making a purchase. Don't click through the link. Go open up your browser and go to Amazon or Apple or wherever, and sign in the way that you would if you were to just casually go to browse something. Sign in, look at your order history, and then you're in a better state of mind to take action. And the majority of the times you're going to go in there and be like, oh, look, yeah, I know I didn't order something for $99. And that's where the communication comes in. So you can say to your spouse, say to your children, hey, did you order something from Dick's Sporting Goods, a pair of goalie gloves for $49? And unfortunately, in my house, the answer is usually yes, but you never know. And you want to sign on to these third-party sources and confirm there, because that's going to be the authoritative source anyway. And when you get an email, assume it's a scam until you can demonstrate that it's not. And this next slide here looks like an email. This is an email that I received a couple weeks ago, and it looked like it was from the United States Postal Service. And it's got a link in there that says https www.usps.com, et cetera, invoice. All these words that look like they're important, and it says HTTPS, so that must be secure, right? Well, here's the trick. When you're in your webmail or your Outlook, or however you're reading your email, just put the mouse over the link, and what you'll see is in the bottom. So you're going to hover over the link, and you'll see in the bottom what that link actually points to. So regardless of what it says it points to, it may actually be pointing to someplace else. So here it looked like it's going to USPS.com, but it's actually going to BagleyandAssociates.net, ViewDoc, file.php. And this is a common, and probably the most common way of getting malware on your computer. And once that happens, you're open to a lot of vulnerabilities. So speaking of vulnerabilities, let's talk a little bit about secure online shopping. So Jeff Bezos is going to like me for saying this, even though he's not going to send anything to me. And I'm going to say, limit your purchasing to a handful of places. That I'm not endorsing Amazon.com or Walmart or anybody else, but if you can, get used to shopping in just a handful of places. Why? Because you'll be able to quickly see a nice list of your order history. You'll be able to limit the number of passwords that you need to remember. And if you recall from a few minutes ago, remembering multiple complex passwords is non-trivial. And once you get used to shopping from just a couple of places, you'll get used to the rhythm of the kinds of emails that that they send, when they send them, how they send them. That said, be mindful that the majority of online shoppers go to places like Walmart and Amazon and use American Express or use Bank of America's Visa card, these sorts of things. So you might be a shopper with an Amex card, a Bank of America Visa, and shop at Amazon exclusively. Well, scammers are going to be able to guess that you might shop at Amazon and use your Bank of America Visa card. So you might get emails that look like they're from Amazon or look like they're from Bank of America. But remember to double check every link, and even before you do that, just say, "Oh, cool! Look, I got a notification from Amazon." Rather than clicking through the link, let me sign on to Amazon and have a look. You want to track your receipts. And if you have a lot of teenagers in the house, that's nearly impossible, but try anyway. Because you may not have made those purchases. You might make a dozen purchases every month. And, so you've got 150 purchases a year that you make online, and have a look at the receipts and have a look at your credit card statement. Make sure everything lines up. It's very easy to lift a credit card and get charged $5.99 for something, and if you've got a $5,000 a month credit card statement, you may or may not pick out a charge to Amazon for $5.99, but that may not be legit. And you might get the phone call that says, "Hi, I just wanted to confirm your order. You ordered a leather raincoat and an expensive handbag." That's a phone call I got back in March from some store I would never shop in Long Island City, New York. So I knew that it was either a scam or a really good scam where they were double dipping on trying to social engineer that experience. So a good way of mitigating your vulnerabilities with respect to online shopping is to put alerts on your bank accounts and your credit cards. For example, I use the American Express card a lot for business, like many business owners. And I get an email every time my card is used and the card was not present. So if I'm out to dinner and I use my credit card for dinner, I do not get an email. But if something an order is placed online where the card was not actually present to be swiped, I will get an email, and then I can use that email to just say, "Oh yeah, I did make that purchase," or I made that purchase, but it shouldn't have been that amount. And then you can go back to the source, either sign on to Amex or sign on to your credit card company's website and check your charges. Do things correlate. Use credit cards with good fraud protection. Increasingly, this is becoming less of an issue than it has been historically, but it is very important to work with a bank and a credit card that offers solid fraud protections. A credit card gives you a little bit of insulation better than a debit card. A debit card. So when you make a purchase, say you put you you place an order for some good, let's say it's $100. What will happen on your credit card is there'll be what's called an authorization charge, where they'll basically see, does your credit limit accommodate for $100 charge? And then when the product is actually shipped, that money is actually captured. So it's like a two-step process. And it's not a big deal when it's a credit card and it's just working against your credit limit. And these authorizations come and go all the time. For example, you can buy a tank of gas for $15, but you could wind up with $100 authorization because that's the policy of that gas station. With a debit card, there's no credit limit to seize. The only thing that can be secured, so to speak, is the actual cash balance in your bank account. So a debit card, you're a little bit more vulnerable than you are with a credit card, and you want to be mindful of that when you place orders. So debit cards are great to make sure that you're using your money, and you can manage it very closely. And that can be better than a credit card if you're prone to overspending. A credit card can be like, oh, this is great, plastic's awesome, and then you get the $5,000 bill at the end of the month. Debit card gives you a little bit more controls there, but it has the downside that it's got a little bit more vulnerability with respect to credit holds and these sorts of things. And that can be particularly challenging if you were to place an order for something that has a long lead time. So if you're going to place an order with a small boutique vendor that manufactures and handcrafts every product, and let's say it's a $300 item, and you put the order down on your debit card. With a credit card, you're good at just kind of hitting your credit limit. But with a debit card, that cash is tied up, and you might need that for groceries or something. So just be mindful that debit cards work a little bit differently. So we're going to wrap up with a handful of other kind of summary items, and then we can open up and see about your questions. So here, I mentioned a couple moments ago about the call that I received in March. So I was on vacation, and I got a phone call from Nordstrom's or some place that we just don't normally shop, and they say, we're about to ship out this online order, and we wanted to confirm this because the destination address was different than your home address. And I was like, okay, so what did I order from Nordstrom's? Because I don't remember making that order, and I don't think my wife shops there. And it was over $1,000 of like a leather, like real nice leather handbag and raincoat, and stuff that we don't order. But I was also mindful that the person who was calling me might be the scam itself, and not that my credit card had been compromised. So I took the information, and then I got off the phone there, and then I signed on to my credit card, and I saw that there were in fact a charge from Nordstrom's there for $1,200 or whatever that painful experience was. So I knew at that point that a charge did take place, and I wasn't getting doubly scammed by just a phone call trying to social engineer. Because what happens in these circumstances, they say, well, I just want to confirm your home address. I want to confirm the security on your card and that sort of thing. So whenever possible, when you get these kinds of circumstances, assume it's a scam. Be polite, because we should always be polite to people. And you'll feel even better when you realize it's not a scam and you were polite. Verify from multiple sources of information, and then proceed in a calm fashion. And yes, I did ask my wife if she had purchased the handbag, and she said no, which was very, very good. So we want to be careful about publicizing our vacation. You see a lot of times on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and other things that I'm too old to use at this point in time. saying, "Hey, look at us! We're hanging over the cliff in Barbados, ready to go cliff diving." Well, when you post that information and you got that picture of your entire family and the dog on vacation, guess what? Nobody's at your house, and you've just communicated that to people that perhaps you wouldn't want to have that information. So no problem sharing information. Just wait till you get back and say, "Look at this amazing trip we had. Fido went over the cliff and caught the Frisbee and swam to shore just fine. We had a great time." But post those pictures after you get back. And I'll just wrap up with this comment. The online content is like toothpaste. You squeeze it out of the tube and you're not getting it back. You post something online and that has a life cycle all its own. It's there for a very long time, and you sort of kind of maybe can pay somebody a lot of money to expunge online posts and things, but it's a lot of drama. Don't post anything that you wouldn't want to be brought to your next job interview or your next character witness opportunity, or when you're getting your security clearance. You don't want somebody to pull out a Facebook post and say, "Can you explain this here?" It does a lot of things. One is it can compromise your reputation. It can close doors. And if you happen to do something a little bit over the edge, it could even lead to some uncomfortable extortion or blackmail things. And those things don't happen every day, but again, taking a super secure posture, it's useful to be careful about what we publicize. So that's the conclusion of the formal presentation. See if we have any questions. Right now, I don't see that we have any open questions. Gonna share a couple of pieces of information for more info. You can see our contact information here if you want to learn more, or tell me what we got wrong. That's fun too. We're always learning. Okay, we've got, looks like one question. Okay, so question is, how do you set alarms on your credit cards? So the easiest way to do this would basically two ways. One is if you've signed on to, if your credit card has an online portal so you can pay your bill or schedule payments or see your charges, then very frequently your credit card is going to have a mechanism to say, "I want to set a threshold." And these alarms could look like, let me know if any transactions take place where the card's not present, as we talked about earlier. There's also, if there's a charge that's greater than $100, $500, etc., then I want to know about it. Different credit card companies have different ways of going about it. The other thing that you can do is, it's always a very solid bet, is to call the number on the back of your card. Don't look up, "Hey, I have a Bank of America Visa card. Let me Google and find out the phone number." Just take the card out of your wallet, flip it over, and there's always an 800 number on the back of the card, and that's your best bet for getting that kind of service. And if you find that your credit card company does not offer those kinds of services, then my guidance would be to shop around for another credit card company. And while we're at it, I'm personally very conservative fiscally, and I'm not a big fan of having excessive lines of credit or credit cards, but it will happen. If you use a credit card long enough, your card will very likely be compromised. And if you're finding yourself in a place where your card is compromised, have a backup plan, which might be another credit card that you only use in cases of emergency. So when I was in Florida, luckily I had an alternate credit card that I could buy gas with to bring everybody home with. So just another note on credit cards. Okay, so there's another question here. Is it just when you open a link on your email that can open your computer to problems, or opening the email itself? That's a great question. So the predominant risk is when you click through a link. That's 95% of the vulnerabilities. However, you can have a challenge when you open an email, and I'll show you how. So we've all seen emails where there's a photograph. It could be a logo of a company, et cetera, that's in the background of the email. And when your email reader first opens the email and wants to present or render the email to you, it's going to try to display that image. If you want to make sure that your computer, PC, Mac, Linux, whatever it is that you're using, iPhone, Android, you want to make sure that you stay current on the security patches that are deployed from the vendor. So there have been, over the years, a handful of vulnerabilities where someone's computer has not been patched, and there was a problem in the way that the computer rendered, say, a JPEG image. And JPEG is a very common file format for pictures on the internet. And imagine if someone could craft a JPEG image such that when it was decoded and went to be displayed, that it could cause some vulnerability on your computer. Kind of like you open a window and something it should be a relatively safe thing because nobody can climb through the third story window casually. But some aroma from outside came in and created a vulnerability. That's kind of what it's like with a picture that's attached that could have some malicious code in it if your computer is not actively patched. And deploy antivirus and keep it up to date and make sure that your operating system is patched. For example, if you're running Windows XP or Windows Server 2003, or Vista, or Windows anything older than that, your computer is very, very vulnerable. You want to stay on a more current operating system and make sure that it's patched. So that answers that question. How secure is using PayPal? Great question. So you should treat PayPal like you would any other online site. The risk, generally speaking, PayPal is fine. Here's a couple of circumstances where you have some vulnerabilities. One is PayPal is, if it's not the largest, it's one of the largest and most popular means of transferring funds in the world. And as such, it's very ripe for email scams where you get the email from what looks like it's PayPal or eBay or whomever. It says, hey, you're so-and-so, Melissa sent you an invoice for $10, or your payment to Todd did not go through. Click here to double check your information. So again, there's a vulnerability. If you do get that email, take a breath, take a walk, whatever you need to do to calm down. Go sign in to PayPal or eBay or wherever. And if there was a circumstance that triggered an alert coming to you, it'll be listed in the site. So be very mindful of that. The other thing with PayPal that comes to mind is you have a PayPal account that's basically, it's your email address, and you can tie a couple of different payment methods to your account. It can be a credit card or multiple credit cards, but it can also be a bank account. So be mindful of what bank account you might tie to a PayPal account or any ACH, automatic clearinghouse, electronic check transaction. You want to be careful to, if you're going to do electronic funds transfers like that, directly from a bank account, my guidance would be to establish a separate account that's the only account you ever use for that purpose. So for example, in my business, I've got multiple accounts with the bank. I've got an operating account, I've got a savings account, and then I've got what I call the transfer account. And I just keep a relatively small amount of money in the transfer account. And that's used for things like online subscriptions that get paid through PayPal and are automatically deducted. That way, and I do not have overdraft protection on that account. So if money comes out of that account, let's say the vendor makes a mistake and puts a couple extra zeros on their transaction, they're only going to hit a certain threshold of maybe $1,000 on that account, and I don't have a big vulnerability that somebody else's accident or fraudulent activity wiped out the operating account that's got all the payroll in it. That's a bad circumstance. Okay, there's a question about specific password managers who prefer to use the program's recommended password. So the password manager question, there's a number of pieces of software on the market. I do not endorse any particular one. Some of these have been compromised themselves. You need to be careful. I tend to trust myself and my ability to secure information better than the a third party to trust all of that. That's not to say that it's a bad idea and people do it all day, and there are some very good companies. I personally don't. For the most part, a good password policy is going to be make it complex and change it from time to time. If you've not changed your password in 15 years, it might be time to do so. And part of this question is it preferred to use a program's recommended password? I generally speaking would not use a recommended password, because if someone could recommend that, they could say, hey, listen, on June 20th, I recommend it to Frank to use password ABC123. Well, there's record of that someplace. And let's say I just said, yeah, I'll use that. Even if it's scrambled digits and you're like, oh yeah, nobody's ever going to guess that. Well, that information has been created someplace. It might be correlated with my user ID. It might have been intercepted in transit, the information on its way to me. So I would not use a password that was just generated for me. I would, taking a conservative posture, I would say, yeah, nice idea. Let me add a couple digits or rearrange something here if I thought it was a good starting point. Okay. Okay, so we've got another question here. Is what's the safest way to pay bills online? So probably the best ways to do this would be either with a recurring transaction from your credit card, again, so you can get used to what the pattern is. So for example, the water company delivers 10 bottles of water every couple weeks to your house, and you want to pay that online. You can either put that on your credit card or use your bank's bill pay. I tend to stay in my bank's bill pay or use a credit card. I very, very rarely will go to some merchant's website and do some other form of payment there. I'd rather, and if I do, I'm using my credit card. Why? Because I have a number of controls there. I've been a member since whenever, so I can call the 800 number and say, hi, this is Frank, I need some help. And they say, oh, Mr. Ableson, which nobody calls me, but it's always nice to hear that. Mr. Ableson, thank you for being a customer for forever. How can I help you today? And I say, oh, well, I've got a question about this charge. Oh, I'll take care of that right away. Make the payment, subtract out this transaction that you're concerned with, and we'll initiate an inquiry right away. So that's I will pay with my preferred credit card, and I'll pay with my my bill pay, right from the bank. Yeah, so sometimes you can put your checking account number in, for electronic funds transfer, electronic check, and I will not do that unless I'm with a very trusted relationship. I'll give you a couple of examples, or my conservative nature tends to maybe make me a little cheap too. So if I know that I have to pay a little extra in order to um, pay by credit card, sometimes I will, because I would rather pay another dollar or two if I'm a little anxious about. I'd rather pay a couple dollars extra to use my credit card than to give somebody my routing number and my checking number. But be mindful that we give our checking information away for years. You write a check and you hand it to somebody, the routing number's on there, the bank account number's there on there, your home address is on there, the proper spelling of your name is on there, and guess what? Your signature is on there. I mean, so in many respects, I'd rather shop online than hand somebody a check. The other circumstance where I will use an electronic check is if the recipient of the money is going to be negatively impacted by the discount fee that the credit card company is going to take. So for example, one of the things that we do in our business is we set aside a certain portion of our income for ministry purposes, and every month, towards the end of the month, we distribute those funds. And one of the folks that we will distribute money to is Samaritan's Purse. This is Franklin Graham's organization, and they do relief all over the world. And it's just and they have the Operation Christmas Child, and it's an organization that we are just really big fans of. And we tend to make non-trivial contributions. They say, "Hey, we're trying to send 35,000 Operation Christmas Child boxes out by Thursday," and I want to invest in that. It's important to us. So if I know that if I made a large contribution on my credit card, that a good portion of those funds are out of my pocket. They're not going to Samaritan's Purse, and Amex would keep them. And in that circumstance, with a trusted vendor that I have a merchant or a relationship that I personally have a relationship with, I will use an electronic check, and I will do it out of that transfer account, not my main operating account. So you see these strategies kind of intertwine a little bit. So if you're gonna do an electronic check, don't do it out of your primary checking account. Every bank is competing for business, and if your bank gives you a hard time about doing something you want, there's plenty of bankers who would love to hold on to our money to give us better terms. Okay, we've got a question here about how do I prevent viruses? Well, the best way of preventing a virus is to not use your computer. But assuming we are in fact going to use the computer, we will recommend that you keep your operating system up to date. You be mindful of who you let use the computer and what they're using it for. There's our children are a source of germs in all venues. They come home from sports or school or Sunday school or whatever, birthday parties, and they're full of germs, and they go online and say, "Hey, look, I'm playing this game," and you're like, "All right, where are you? What are you doing? How did you get there?" So be mindful of who uses computer and how, and keep your computers patched. That's crucial to. Patch. Sorry, thrown out terms. Security updates. You get a notice that says there's a security update. If you've probably seen on your iPhone, there's a new software release. Go ahead and install it. It's okay, generally speaking, you don't have to jump on that the first day that it comes out, unless there's a very specific known issue that that this this release is going to address. There is some degree of, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But again, if you're driving a 1965 Corvair with some holes in the floorboards, patch it up. Be mindful that you're probably a little bit vulnerable to snow and ice and intrusion there, and you don't have to jump on the software updates the day they come out, because sometimes that can lead to some more drama. But it is a good idea to keep them updated. And if you get in over your head, you've got kind of two choices: hire a professional, or hire your nephew and offer to bake them chocolate cake and barbecue chicken or something, and entice them over to the house and get your computer fixed. I've had many a good dinner at my aunt and uncle's house, putting the computer back together. It's not good for business, but it's good for family. Yeah. Okay, so if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to send an email to us at info@Navitend, or give us a call. You're also welcome to reach out to the folks at Kemp. Just call the main number and ask for Melissa or Heather, or somebody will get back with you. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to point you in the right directions. Thanks so much for your time today, and hopefully this was beneficial.
Thanks, Frank. Certainly appreciate your time today on the presentation. I know there's a lot of information in there that was very helpful. A lot of it that seems common sense, but also a lot of it that was just very new and enlightening. So we appreciate that. And so again, thank you for being a part of the call today. And if you have questions, as Frank said, feel free to reach out to him, or of course to Kemp Harvest Financial. We'll be glad to set you up with any answers or responses we can. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Take care.